It is always an honor for me to kick off one of my favorite events at Wellington. This is our 9th annual All Things Wellington, and the first one we had 40 people, and this year we have 300 people here, as well as tens of people who for the first time are following us in our live streaming. Tens of people. And I always have the honor of kicking this off with some discussion of my thoughts on some of our areas of curriculum. So here we go. There's been an ongoing argument between my sons and me for some number of years about who the greatest players in the history of the NBA are. And there's a generational component to this argument, but more to the point, we've never been able to agree on a methodology for making the decision that we all buy into. So I determined to develop a methodology. The methodology would have to have 4 characteristics. First, it would have to measure the innate quality of the player. This is not an issue of how good the team was that they played or how good their coach was. It must be in the player himself. Second, there has to be dependable accuracy in the measurement. Don't give me anecdotes. And I don't want to talk about intangibles. The qualities must be measurable. Third, the measurable must be easily obtained, nothing complex, nothing hard to get. And fourth, the data, once collected, has to be straightforward without the possibility of being misinterpreted. It has to be unarguable. So, happily, I've created a methodology, and it is true to these 4 commandments, and I'm happy to announce that I can now put forward the 2 greatest players in NBA history. They are Jorge Muresan, the beloved Washington Bullet and New Jersey Net, who averaged 9.8 points a game and 6.3 rebounds during his 5-year career. And of course, everybody's favorite Bullet, Warrior, 76er, and Heat, Manute Bol, 2.6 points and 4.3 rebounds in his 10-year career. In order to reach this conclusion, my methodology reduces all basketball judgment to one characteristic: height. Now, both were 7 feet 7 inches tall, and they're tied for the tallest player in the history of the NBA. Poor Shawn Bradley. Who remembers Shawn Bradley? Only 7'6". If he could have grown just 1 more inch, he could have been the greatest. Now, I know what you're thinking. Height has nothing to do with shooting, ball handling, defending, or having a sense of the floor. All important points in determining great basketball players. And I respond by saying, sure, but height is important. It is important in basketball, and it is an innate quality. It is accurately measured. It is easily obtained and unarguable. So what if it doesn't tell us any more than that? Why do I bring this up? Well, it's clear that this measure of NBA greatness is absurd. And yet, in the world of education has been doing similar things for years. Consider, if you will, the SAT, the hallowed test invented in 1926 and still used to this day. Doesn't it, through its reasoning tests, measure an innate quality? Well, we sure think so. We conducted a study of the members of the class of 2014 who were recognized through the Merit Scholars Program. How do you get Merit Scholar recognition? Do you all know? I see some nods. Monica Mahoney, my wife, is nodding. There are, right, okay, criteria 1, you have to do really well in the PSAT. Criteria 2, oh wait, there is no criteria 2. You just have to do really well in the PSAT. In our study of Merit Scholars recognized students, we discovered that every single student recognized was a superb standardized test taker in his or her admissions test to enter Wellington. That's right, if you want to be a great standardized test taker in 10th grade, you better be a great standardized test taker in 2nd grade. So there's not a whole lot you can do about it. It's innate. Also, it's accurately measured, easily obtained, and unarguable. A 720 is higher than a 710 every time. Now, it doesn't have a whole lot to do with how good a student you are, and it certainly doesn't predict college or life success. Particularly astounding is the degree to which the world has developed sophisticated ways of understanding since the SAT's birthday in 1926. The Human Genome Project and the use of brain scans are just two ways in which we have grown to understand natural phenomenon in ways largely unimaginable in 1926. The ability to use big data to understand human behavior, one of my favorite examples being Aiden's and Michelle's Uncharted, have moved us forward tremendously, and yet we are still standardizing children, reducing them to two numbers as if it were 1926. So why do I care about this? Well, when I entered the field of education, this was in fact in 1926. I chose independent schools, and I made that choice for two reasons. I'm a product of independent education, so it was the world I knew best. But more important, I knew that independent schools, more than any other segment in the education community, believed in the pursuit of knowledge in depth, the power of quest for discovery, and the appreciation of the beauty of the brain, the life of the mind. And these were the attractions that led me to enter the lucrative field of Latin instruction. So this leads me back to why I'm disparaging our dependence on the SAT, and particularly why I'm critical on schools, private, public, and parochial, that rest their identity on standardized test performance. I'm passionate about asking bigger, deeper questions. And one of the important questions we've been asking here is, what is truly worth measuring? What, if we could know it, might truly lead to stretching our students better? And our first set of questions have been, what is student engagement? Why is it important? And can we measure it? A quick refresher, with apologies for those of you who've heard me talk about this endlessly, which means the entire staff. We define student engagement as that intersection where students find their work deeply challenging and love it. We believe that both are important. It's our belief that students who find their work challenging and love it are disposed to look for more challenging work. Positive association with challenge propels students. And we set out to measure student engagement. We developed the following grid. It is our goal to drive students to experiences in the engaged quadrant. That is the area where students experience high challenge and love it, and have as little activity as possible in what we call the bored quadrant, the area where students are unchallenged and hate it. In order to collect student scores, we asked experts on the subject of whether students are challenged and love it, and those experts are the students themselves, who consume more educational experience than anyone. We started collecting this information in May of 2013 through student surveys on paper, and have since perfected the method and digitized it with the help of our resident genius, John Cruzan, who is over there serving the tens of people who are watching us on live stream, and visiting genius Alex Hay, who's in the crowd here somewhere. Would you wave to the people, Alex? I know you don't want to do that. Alex Hay. We have developed a powerful tool for data analysis. So I'd like to share with you some of the research we've collected. First, let me give you a quick tour of this slide. These are the dots from all of our students, grade 5 through 12, collected in October of 2015, this past October. Each dot represents a single student's input about a single class. So if your child takes 6 classes, 6 of those dots are your child's dots. Can you recognize your child's dot? Now notice the percentages appearing in each of the 4 quadrants. And then our big blue dot represents the average of all of the responses in the data set. And the X bar refers to the average of the love it and hate it spectrum on a scale of -200 to +200. And the Y bar refers to the average of the challenged and unchallenged spectrum. As I said, these dots are all of our 5th through 12th graders, and we've thrown in a few 4th grade dots experimentally. You can see that 58.6% of our students' experiences are in the engaged quadrant at this data taking, and 6.6 in the bored quadrant. When we started to collect measurements in the infancy of our project, we were seeing that most samples the engaged percentage was about 50%, and the board responses were somewhere around 15%. and this came out over and over in 2013 and early 2014. We proposed and put it as a measurable in the school's 5-year strategic plan adopted by our Board of Trustees last June, that we reach 60% of our student class experience in the engaged quadrant and less than 10% in the board quadrant by the end of the 2019-2020 school year. Well, the faculty has been doing extraordinary work, and we have seen enormous movement already. And since we are at 58.6 and 6.6, we're now thinking that our 60 and 10 goal was not ambitious enough. But one of the questions we're dealing with is we didn't know whether we really could impact this or not. I think our early findings are that we can impact this. So next you will see what we affectionately call dot plots from one grade. In the 9th grade, you can see if you look at the X bar and the Y bar that challenge is higher than love it, although they're both high. How does this compare to other grades? This is information that gives us the ability to compare. If 9th and 7th grade are significantly different, why? This allows us questions, and it allows us to track over time. The next example of our research shows a very select sample. Last fall, I had lunch with a group of teachers who met 2 criteria. First, they taught classes with 100% of their students reported that they were in the engaged zone. It's pretty remarkable. And second, all of those classes had more than 6 students. I had a class with 3 and they were in the engaged zone, but if you can't get 3 students into the engaged zone, you shouldn't be teaching, and maybe I shouldn't. So I asked simply, what did they do, and was there anything in their that their courses had in common? And one answer did emerge, that in all of these courses, a significant degree there was a significant degree of student autonomy, that students had the opportunity to direct their learning in some particularly important way. So another way we can use this information is to look at separate classes for comparison's sake. For instance, if we look at 2 required courses in the same area of the school, what accounts for the differences in the student reports? We take a look at 2 courses here with 2 courses with the same student population, same kids making the dots, but with very different engagement representations. Division heads armed with this kind of information can ask deeper questions about what the issues are. Finally, we have the opportunity to identify individual students, and I'm going to tell you this, and we tell the students this. You may come to me before I'm done with my talk here and say, I'd like information about my child's dots. We will not give you information about your child's dots, nor will we give the teachers information about individuals' dots. And the reason is that once we do that, we don't think we can ever expect that we're going to get honest feedback from students. But I get to look at all the students' dots, and the division heads at various points do. So what we can identify individual students, and this information gives us the ability to identify students who might be under-challenged or be hating their work, as we see the student on the left. The student on the right is more typical of the feedback we've received, high on challenge and loving it. And we have additional information. Suddenly, we not only can see the specific student's dot constellation, but we can even tell which dots are which courses. And I've selected this one in particular because you can't really read them because they're all mushed up together, right? So, but we have that information that we can use as well. As I hope you can tell, we've started to develop some incredibly interesting research. Since I spoke about this last, there's been another significant development that I want to tell you about. After presenting this research to the heads of the Independent Schools Association of the Central States, our accrediting group of schools, and then speaking to the full Isaacs Conference of Teachers, the interest in the project was extraordinary, and 9 schools have joined us to form a group called MUSE, M-U-S-E, which stands for Measuring and Understanding Student Engagement. Wellington, as the lead and founding school, is now influencing education throughout the Midwest. Over the weekend, I received notice that a consortium of public school superintendents from Wichita, Kansas want to talk with us about our project. Thus, our work may influence a much broader discussion about education. I should mention as well that we are in touch with Susan Cain, the author of the bestseller Quiet, the Power of Introverts, and we are in discussion as to how our work on engagement and her work on introverts might complement each other. We'll let you know how and if that pans out. So we are interested in big questions, and engagement is just one area of inquiry. Can we measure other factors that are important in a Wellington education? What if we could provide better data about resilience, leadership, or interpersonal communication, for instance? What would a comprehensive student dashboard look like, and would that be worthwhile? And what about for parents? What if we could provide valuable feedback about how you might best impact your child's achievement? So imagine this. On one axis, we look at student achievement. And on the other axis, we look at the degree of parent involvement. And what if, through research, we were able to discover that certain levels of parental involvement correlate with certain levels of student achievement? Would you want to know that? I think you might. Let's imagine that there's a sweet spot for parents between under-involvement and over-involvement that correlates with high student achievement. And what if we discovered, for instance, through our research, that attendance at ATW, all Things Wellington, correlated highly with achievement? And what if your practice of CSS, you all know what that is, cradling your senior at school, correlated with low achievement? Would you find that kind of information useful? Your presence tonight at All Things Wellington, we're not going to guarantee that it will raise your student's achievement, but your child's achievement, but your presence here is a sign that you like big questions. And liking big questions correlates highly, we know this from scientific study, with appreciating tonight's program. The program we'll be presenting tonight, all the programs we'll be presenting tonight are philosophically aligned, as all of them point to asking students to think more deeply, to discover, and to realize the beauty of their own brains. I hope you enjoy our program.